Welcome to the Miracle Frequency, where science meets spirit and the extraordinary becomes your new normal. I'm your host, FairyKimSparkles, and this is the space where we tune your brain, heart, and spirit to the divine signal. Whether you're here for stories of synchronicity, interviews that awaken possibility, or neuroscience based insights that rewire your reality, you're in exactly the right place. Because miracles do have a frequency and you can learn to hear it. So take a deep breath, soften your heart, and let's drop into today's transmission.
Welcome. I am here with the beautiful Clarine, and she is going to share her experience with us so we can witness the miracle of God in action from her life of living in Cameroon to moving to Canada. So thank you for being here, Clarine.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here with you. And like you say, yeah, it's a story of miracle, a series of miracles actually. And I uh I I didn't imagine myself a mom of six, you know, packing all my kids and leaving Cameroon in one go on the same plane, everyone the same day. That's not something I thought would happen, but it did happen. I had a beautiful life in Cameroon, just raising it was a beautiful and simple life. And yet at the same time, I wanted something more for myself and especially for my kids as a single mom. And I have six kids, like I said, the eldest are twins. And part of the reason why we left was that I was thinking I want to send them abroad for their studies. And I couldn't send just one at a time, especially as they are twins and they go to school together, same classes, and they will graduate high school together. So they had to, in my mind, they had to go to university together and hopefully in the same country. I think that's what triggered it initially. And then when I started investigating, I realized that it would be very, very expensive, to send one child abroad as an international student, let alone two. So I realized that because in Canada, it would have been $20,000 per person and per year. That's like $40,000 for both per year. I that was inconceivable for me. So I started looking at alternatives and I found out that immigrating to Canada would enable us to would enable them to pay school fees just like residents, or citizens. That will cut it by four or five, that cost. So that helped me make the choice to move to Canada, and I started the process.
Wonderful. Can you walk us through what did that process look like?
Actually, to immigrate to Canada, that would depend on there's so many paths to immigrate to Canada, but I chose the professional path because I'm a translator by profession, and they explicitly said that there was a high demand for translation professionals. So I used that path as a professional to come to Canada. And in those days, that's it's been 10 years now. In those days, you will download documents from the website, from the government's website, fill them up, and then send them by mail. I used DHL, no publicity, and send them by mail, and then wait for a response. And then sometimes they will require additional documents, and then you submit those additional documents through the same route. And eventually they will accept or reject your request. And technically, they said it would take 2 or 3 years in those days, but my process took about 5 years, almost 5.5 years in total. Because between the time I submitted mine, because in Cameroon doesn't have a Canadian embassy, but uh, Cote d'Ivoire had a Canadian embassy. So we had to submit, I had to submit my application via Cote d'Ivoire. But in the meantime, Cote d'Ivoire, there was a war broke out in Cote d'Ivoire. So embassies were vandalized and people even lost, their documents, their files. And thankfully, mine was salvaged miraculously, I would say, because I always credit it to the fact that every time I will, fill out my forms, I will go and see the priest. I'll tell him, please, can you, because I'm Catholic, I'll say, Father, could you please bless my documents? This is my project, and he'll say a prayer and bless my document, and then I will send it. So we were in forums. In those days, there were forums like group chats online where people share their experiences of immigrating to Canada. And I will see people complaining, saying that they received a letter saying that their documents were lost, so they have to reapply. And I kept waiting and didn't hear anything from mine. And it was not advised to resubmit, right? So the advice was just stay put, wait, they'll communicate with you. If they say have yours, they'll send it to you. They'll tell you. If they don't, they'll still tell you. So I waited, and eventually, over 2 years or almost 3 years later, I got a reply telling me that um, my documents were now in France, and they were being processed in France now, and then that I will hear from them again eventually. So that's one miracle in a chain of many already. So I applied, and then so after 2.5 years, almost 3 years, they finally sent me a letter telling me, because some of the documents I had submitted were outdated. For example, a police report. They needed a police report, for example. So they said I had to resubmit something like that. So I had to resubmit some of the documents, and then I did. And then I waited. I waited, I waited another maybe a year and a half. And then eventually they sent me another letter confirming that, I had to go and do medicals. And when you're in that process, when they tell you, oh, it's time for the medicals, everything is good, you'll have your visa, you'll have your permanent residency. It was a huge, huge, huge news. And yet at the same time, between my application and all the uncertainty around it, I somehow I wasn't sure. Somehow I just said, oh well, if they salvage my application, fine. If not, maybe I should just, stay in Cameroon and take care of the things that I was taking care of. And I bought a small plot, and I started building my house there. So when they eventually told me to go and do medicals, I didn't have any savings because I'd put everything I had in building, my small house with my kids. So I
Because
went,
what was this time frame that you had been waiting at this point,
at this point, it would have been around almost 5.5 years.
not knowing if you were going to be able to leave
Yes,
the country or
yes,
move? So
yes,
you made a decision to just invest where you were, build
yes,
a life there. Hmm.
yes, yes. So when they said, oh, time for medicals, I didn't have even $1,000 in the bank as savings. And uh, I raised some money. I raised some money to, I think I sold a few things to do the medicals. So because the medicals amounted to almost $2,000, and a little over $2,000 for all of us, because I had to do it, all the kids had to do it, and it was quite expensive. So we did it, and then that's when I shared with my family, with my mom especially, and my dad, and my brothers and sisters, that oh, we're on the right path now. We're going to Canada. That's when you're certain that you're going to Canada. And since I didn't have much in savings, and my parents both were retired, I'm the eldest of eight. My younger siblings were, I think there was one in the US, but she was a student herself. Another one she was in Great Britain, a student. Another one was in Sweden, a student. I couldn't count on them, just a matter of informing them. I couldn't count on them to raise the fund. I went and saw the priest again, and I told him, Father, that application went through, and it looks like we're going to actually, receive the permanent residency. He said, "Oh, good, that's good." And I said, "But there's that issue because I have not been saving." He knew my house. They said, I've been building, and then I've not saved enough for our flight. I will need a lot of money for the flights. I will need a lot of money just to settle here in Canada. And then before having a job here in Canada, because I was looking, I couldn't see exactly how that would work. So I explained to him, and he looked at me with, the look of, "Oh, ye of little faith." He said, Why? Why would you doubt now? I mean, you've been bringing your documents here for blessings and everything, and now that it's crunch time, you're actually doubting." And we were in his office. He pointed through the window. He pointed at the grotto. We had a grotto and with a Marian shrine there, with a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and then some chairs and everything that the community had built. He told me, "Go there and kneel down. You come here all the time to pray. Go over there and kneel down and ask the Blessed Mother for those favors that you're telling me. Speak to her, talk to her, just like you've been talking to me right here. Why do you think that will be above her? Why do you think that she will not be able to intercede for you, you know, in this matter?" I was going to his office with a lot of anxiety because I knew that um, once they give you the visa, you have 1 year to travel, you have 1 year to move. If within that year you don't move, they'll invalidate it. You will not you will not keep the visa. So I was anxious. I was really in panic mode. And when he said that, a kind of peace just washed over me, like seriously, like a weight had lifted on me. I just went at the grotto and knelt down and I prayed. I prayed. I told the Blessed Mother that I have, because we do the consecration. We call it consecration. As far as kids are, for example, I consecrated myself to her, like acknowledging her as my mother, my heavenly mother. I also consecrated my children to her. It's a process, it's a 33-day process actually. So I actually did that for myself. I also did that for my kids. And very early after my divorce, I had, presented them like that. I told God that these are your children. You better take care of them because you gave them to me, and you better provide because the father is not here. You're the father now. So that's the conversation I had with God at the beginning of my divorce. And then when this happened, I just went there and I reminded the Blessed Mother. I told her that, "Mom, here we are. It is time to really, really, really act because there's this document, there's this process that I'm doing." I explained to her in detail. My God, you know, and when I left there with a huge, huge amount of peace. I but still, I came back. I remember that night I came back home. I even still have that letter. I wrote a letter like somebody I will write to God. I'll write a letter and then I'll make some promises in the letter. I essentially bargaining with God, you know, you know. So I did that, and then I just sort of, forgot about it and not feeling anxious about it anymore. I just went, with my days like that. And once in a while, it will pop into my mind. I will think, is it going to work? Am I going to be able to make it? I have like essentially at that time we had done the medicals and waiting for the letter to get to send our passports over to to Senegal this time so that they will stamp that our visas in the passport. So that would have taken like three because we did the medicals, I think it was early March, and we traveled end of June. March, April, May, June, you know, like 3 months, 3.5 months. And within those 3.5 months, that's where the magic unfolded in ways that I, even to today, looking back at that time, it's still, I still in awe. I'm still in awe. I'm still, you know, I'm still feeling the miracle in those days. Because in those 3.5 months, I after I saw the priest and did my prayer, I went back home and then continued with my day. And maybe a week or two later, I started receiving uh, uh, requests because I'm a translator. I had registered on the website. The website is pros.com. I had registered on the website as a freelance translator. So the way it works is you register and then somebody sees your profile. If they feel it's interesting to them, they will contact you for work for freelance jobs. And so and if you pay for you pay your membership on the website, it's open in a way that you can see job offers and even apply, have the contact information of all the people who sent the job offers there. So I went there and I see I've even paid twice, 2 years consecutively. It was $100 per year, $100 per year. For 2 years consecutively, I had paid, but I never received any job on that website. I was on that website, I kid you not, for 10 years. I had never, as a member, paid member for 2 years, and with free membership for the rest of the time, I had never received work from that website. But then suddenly I received an email saying from a Canadian translation agency saying, "Oh, Clarine, we saw your profile, we really like it, and we have some documents to translate, and it's in the areas that you translate. Would you have time? Are you available for this translation? And this is how much we're paying this much for this translation." And the amounts they will quote, Kim, the amount they will quote and tell me, if they had asked me, I would not even have asked for half of that. I was like, oh my God. I first thought maybe this is a scam. But then, I was in my mind, I'm like, oh my God. Okay, I respond, yes, I'm available. They send the document, I look at it, and then I translate it and I send it to them and they pay me. This is for real. That first job alone was almost $10,000.
Wow.
That first job, I was checking it the other day. That in my email, that first job alone was almost $10,000.
What
And
a
then
blessing.
another one about $2,000. And then another one from a translation agency based in Luxembourg. And then another one, and then another. I mean, consecutively like that. I had never, I mean, I was submerged with translation requests, and not small contracts like $2,000, $1,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 contracts in that short amount of time. And then I went, and one thing also that surprised me in those days was that they will normally they say, okay, when you translate like that, it's freelance job. They will pay you maybe after 30 days or after 45 days. But for some reason, for some reason, they'll pay me almost immediately. Almost immediately, some of those agencies. And I was like, oh my God. And then I kept looking, seeing how my account was just growing and growing and growing. I'm like, this is actually possible. I can actually make it to Canada. And then I mean, the day I went to buy our flight tickets, I initially went and I went at the agency, it was Royal Air Maroc. That's the Moroccan um, airlines. I went there, I asked for a quote. The woman looked at me and she even started to advise me. So, what you can do is that you can go first and then eventually you can go and you get a job there and then you can, you know, uh, get your kids to meet you over there. I said, no, I want to go with my kids. In my mind, there was no way I would leave them behind. I want to take my kids with me. There's no way I'm leaving them behind. We're going together or we're not going at all. So the day when eventually I got enough money to pay for the flight ticket, I took that amount out of my account, cash. See how crazy I was? I took all that money cash. I was with my son. I put that money in my handbag, and then I went to that travel agency. And as I got in, that lady, I told her that I'm coming to pay for the flight tickets, and then she said, "Oh, seven." I said, "Yes." Oh, she was shocked. She took me from the main area where we're sitting. When you get in, there are many tables and many attendants and everything. When I opened my bag, I wanted to take the money. She said, "No, wait, wait." She took me in the office in the back, and there's where she said, "How can you be out here with that much?" It was about $15,000 that I had in my handbag for all of us, all the out there. She said, "How can you be, going about in this town with that much money in your hand?" So, but then she processed everything and she gave us our flight tickets. And then that's when I knew that, oh, we're on our way. We're on our way. And then I got back home, and then um, by that time they had already I've asked for our passport, and then I had already sent the passport and everything. This was early June. This was early June. I would travel on the 25th of June. That's 2015. I remember my mom came home. She came because she lived in another town. She came and she was like, I confirmed to them that I had the visa, that's when she came. And she asked me, how are we going to do? Because I had not told her that I paid for the tickets already. She kept asking me, how are we going to do? I said, don't worry, don't worry. And then I called her to my room, and then I went into my bag. I took out the ticket. I told her that I paid for the ticket already. Before then, she actually pulled out her bank book. They called it bank book in those days, where it was a savings account, and then she pulled it out and gave it to me, telling me that I don't know how much this can help, but I have a little bit more of money saved up in this account. We can go there tomorrow and take it out and start with whatever. I don't know how much it will help, but we can do that. I didn't even open it to see. I didn't even open it. I just handed it over to her, back to her. I said, no, I paid for the tickets already. My mom was in shock. She couldn't believe it. She said, what? How? How did you do it? I told her, I myself, I can't fathom. I can't explain it, but this is it. These are the tickets. She was like, she was amazed. And I remember she left my room dancing, dancing out of the room like her feet was not touching, her feet were not touching the floor. She was so happy. Yeah, and then that's eventually we travel on the 25th. That was a miracle. I remember even my aunt, one of my aunts, she told me recently, just about 2 or 3 years ago, she told me that that day she could not believe it. She said that day she realized how strong and how resilient I was. And then that is that day that I became like one of her role models. My aunt, that's what my aunt was telling me. And I was like, oh, this is just so sweet. So we traveled on the 25th of June 2015. And on that day, I was traveling, I had about $10,000 on me, cash that I was traveling with. I had paid the tickets for about $14,000, $15,000. That's about $25,000. And on my account back home, since I knew I couldn't travel with more than $10,000 on me. On my account back home, I had maybe another $10,000. And then as was those agencies kept sending me work, so much so that I lived in Canada for 1 year without a job, only on those contracts, only on those contracts for an entire year. And in my case, they didn't lack for anything for that year. Well, as soon as we rented a house, and then, everything went on so smoothly, so smoothly. And I remember after we came here, some friends and even some family, because I didn't tell everybody, obviously. So as soon as I came here, some friends will send me messages. How did you do it? We didn't know you were that rich. Who moves 6 kids on the same day, on the same flight, just like that. So yeah, and every time I think about it, it's a miracle. It's a miracle, and I've given thanks so many times, so many times. I mean, I'm eternally grateful, to God and to the Blessed Mother and to my patron saints, all the saints that have prayed along the way. I'm so grateful to them, especially Saint Jose Maria Escriva. That's one of the saints that I prayed so much to, also during that period. And wouldn't you know it, we moved, we traveled on the 25th, and the 25th of June, the 26th of June is actually the day of the canonization of Saint Jose Maria Escriva. Coincidence, right? And I moved here in Canada, and 2 years later, to the dot, I buy my house. And the day they give me the keys at the 26th of June, still the day of the canonization of that saint. And like a wink telling me that I yeah, so just I most of the time when I think about that experience, I'm like, it couldn't no, it couldn't be me. I just by God's grace. It's God's power, expressing itself in that way. I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful.
Says we're running out of time. Do you have maybe, can we stop this and do another just for, I won't keep you for too long, but I hate for this to go out. Um, I I think we may have 5 more minutes. So I just want to clarify. So from March to when you left in the summer, so what was that, like 4 months?
Yes.
You received from one company that you had been on for 10 years and had no hits of job opportunities. All of a sudden, in those 3 months, all those jobs came from that site.
Yes.
So it was like an open channel direct for God to
That
just
Direct.
deliver,
Mhm.
and they you were so compensated beyond measure of what you would have even considered asking for.
The prices they were offering, I could not have quoted those ones. Yes.
Yeah, and it gave you not only enough to provide the move, but for you to have a whole year of resources, a nest egg to start your new life in Canada.
Yes.
So this is so powerful because if you don't believe in miracles, God, whatever, like how can you refuse? I mean, this is just I get chills every time I hear it. I've heard you share it several times now, and it's just what a blessing, what a gift.
What a gift.
It would convert a non-believer, you know? That's what I mean. It's like so powerful.
Yeah, yes. I mean, that's that story because I've lived through it. It's kept me, so faithful and so I mean, I don't doubt. Whatever I'm going through, I just know God will provide. I mean, before then, even while it was happening, I had some severs of doubt, like, oh, is it gonna work? Is it now? I just know that God will provide. Whatever the situation, I do my prayers and I say, you showed me before. I know you will come through again this time. So yeah,
That is just incredible, phenomenal. I mean, there are no words other than miracle.
there's no other word than that. Even the priest, when I told him, because we had to go and say goodbye to him, and he blessed us before we left, and I was like, oh my God, this is a story to tell, Clarine. This is a story to tell.
Absolutely. Your
And I
story lives
know,
on.
I know he has shared this story a lot of times in church.
That is just so incredible.
God is so good. Yeah.
What would you say to someone who has doubt and doesn't have belief, that's struggling with um, just finding their way in this world, myself included?
Yeah, it's challenging, for all of us to um get to a point where, because sometimes I don't doubt God's faithfulness, right? But I would doubt my own ability to stay faithful to God, and it's, it comes with that what I'll call, a commitment to myself and to my and to my dreams, for example, because for me, that dream of moving to Canada was it was a trigger. It was like you have to believe in this dream to actually take it all the way through. And I knew that the I will need help along the way. As a single mom, 6 kids under my responsibility, I knew I would need help under the way or through that way. That's part of the reason why I went to the priest to bless the documents. That's part of the reason why I will go to him when it was time to raise the money, and because I knew that there's a supernatural power, you know, above us that could do things better than I would myself. So I think it comes with that. That's the prerequisites on knowing that we are creatures and there's a creator, understanding how that creator sees what we don't see, how powerful he is, and trusting in that power. I
Mhm.
really, really trusting in that power. I know it can be very challenging when we are seeing, when there are days we don't eat, that there are days, we feel that we see the lack all around us. But at the same time, it's believing in an abundant universe, a great and powerful God there can be friction there. It can be difficult. But that's also the point also, to transcend those limitations, transcend the reality in quotes, and get to a place where we get to into spiritual realities, to a spiritual place, to a place where they say that this reality where we're in is actually more of a subjective reality than reality itself. That true reality is what is above. True reality is supernatural, is spiritual. So I think what I will tell, somebody who is struggling, and we all do in many ways. It might be financially, it might be health, wise. Like for right now, I have some health issues I'm dealing with, and I have to tap into. I tell myself that the best way of dealing with that is to tap into that power, is to trust also in that power that He provide, and also to hear stories like this, stories that elevate, stories that help you trust, stories that help you believe. Because if you have a desire to believe, you get there. You eventually get there. I have the other day I was actually telling my sons, I was reminding them of the stories of the saints, because those are very, very powerful stories that help to anchor us in our belief in God's power, and in God's um, faithfulness, in God's providence also for us. So bottom line is, if you know that there's this beautiful power, benevolent power that's above all of us, and it's all ready to provide, all ready to um, doing everything for us, all ready to be there for us, and trusting in that power, that's eventually things are going to come together. It's all going to come together. And that's one of my mantras that I used to say. It's all coming together. Yeah, it's all coming together no matter what, no matter what. And truly the story of the saints were um part of the um the stories that help me to remain, anchored in my faith and in my belief in God. And now I'm saying, I was talking to my son I think 2 or 3 days just ago, because he was sharing about some of his own challenges. And I was telling him, you have to believe. You have to believe. And those stories help believe. For example, the story, sometimes we may think that those are myths, or those are, just unbelievable stories. But when you look at the historical um, accounts, from various witnesses of that particular stories, that lends a lot of credibility to those stories, and that really, really reinforces your faith. Yeah. I read recently, I was listening about the story of one saint, that's Saint Denis, who was somebody beheaded him because he was preaching, and then he actually, sorry if this is a little bit graphic, and the person beheaded him, and then he held his head, and he was still preaching. The head was still preaching through the street until he let out all his blood, and eventually he just fell. You see, you read the story like that of somebody who believed to the last minute and even to the price of his own life. How would you not believe? How would you not believe?
Yeah, your conviction. Another reason I wanted to chat with you today, and thank you for your time, is I'm just blown away, not only with this life experience, miraculous story that you've lived through, and may it bless others and help them know and feel faith, um, and believe in miracles, but also in the time that I've known you, which is about 8 months or so now, you just have such conviction, this unwavering belief, and it's just so potent and powerful. And I'm so in awe of you. So, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share about that, Kim. Yes, uh, you're coming back to the idea of being of service by just being. I think part of my challenge, coming to that realization myself, for myself, and even for the people that I coach, was that a lot of because I mostly coach single moms, a lot of them were having that kind of anxiety as to what's my contribution to the world. I'm just, in this loop of anxiety, struggle, problem, survival, raising my kids. What do I bring to the world? And then I kept telling them, by being you already, you're already a contribution to the world. And then by keeping yourself in high vibe, you're already contributing to elevating, the vibration of the world. Because we don't have to do something to be of service. But then when we feel called to do something, we step into that level of service, you know, and do the thing. That's so I'm a what I would call a self-leadership and purpose coach. That's what I do. And then I have a few books, including True Calling, True Niche that you mentioned. And part of what I do is also to help people to heal their emotional wounds because I realize that that's the missing link for many people in terms of finding alignment, in terms of uh, getting grounded and centered in their own in their self, in their body, in their minds. Um, so I do part work. And the sacred becoming is part of is just one of the products that I do to help people really, really find that alignment and not be scattered. And yes, so there's that. And right now I am a little bit more focused on helping coaches to get to that level of alignment as well because I have so many coaches and colleagues have reached out to me. When I shared recently that I've published a total of 6 books in 18 months, so many people have reached out to me and say, "Oh, how do you do that? How do you execute? How do you remain consistent?" And part of the answer is that it's alignment. Part of the answer is getting into alignment and the part work that I do helps them with that. So I created another program, another program for coaches, and this time it's a challenge. It's a 33-day challenge that will help them, you know, get into a place of alignment, and so that execution and consistency become automatic, not a chore. So that doing what they're supposed to do or bringing their contribution when they feel called doesn't feel like a chore for them. And my website is truecallingtrueniche.com, and I am on I think on Facebook as truecallingtrueniche.com as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for this opportunity. And yeah, wouldn't you believe it? It's an inspiration to me myself, you know, because as we grow, as we evolve, we still go through experiences. It might not be a financial struggle, it might not be a marital struggle, and then, a health scare or a health issue that you're going through, and then when it helps to tap into our past and see where we've succeeded before, and see, continue to sow the seeds of success in the instant, in the moment where we are. It helps to keep believing.
Yes, life will continue to give us opportunities to practice
Yeah, totally.
our faith. So
Totally. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
thank you so much. I love you. I appreciate
I
you.
love you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we
Okay.
will close for now.